you joining. Thanks for hopping on this morning at 9 o'clock for Matt Whitcomb, talk about some of his lessons from coaching from over the years. For those of you who don't know and weren't here a couple years ago when Matt came to Steamboat to present to us, Matt is US ski team head cross country team coach. He's from Western Mass originally, grew up ski racing there cross country. Went on to Stratton for a year or two, I believe, and then on to Middlebury College on their ski team. Then jumped right into coaching pretty soon after that up in Whitefish, Montana, and then a number of years at Burke Mountain Academy. And then got picked up by the US ski team as a development team coach in 2006 and has progressed through the team development up through head women's coach, head World Cup coach, and now is head coach of the team. And I think people are pretty aware of the trajectory of the cross country team, and particularly the ladies over the last 15 years. Having been involved in the sport during that time, it's pretty incredible. If you told someone in 2000 that the team would be having the success that it had 5 years ago, or even today, you would have been some disbelief in people. So 15 years ago, there was no top 10 result by U.S. Female at the World Cup level in modern history. And today, any World Cup race, there's a U.S. woman who's a threat to be on the podium or win the race. Obviously, Keegan and Jessie winning Olympic gold in the team sprint in 2018 was a highlight, but it just seems to have kept getting more and more success from then on. And this year, obviously, Jessie Diggins winning the World Cup overall title and multiple women on the podium and achieving success at all levels is incredible. And it's just been very dramatic to see this. And I think Matt has been a huge part of that and building the culture and the atmosphere and the system that's needed to have long-term sustainable success for the team. I do just want to tell two real quick stories before Matt begins that I think kind of tee him up and explain a little bit more how I see his value in his coaching. And could everyone just mute, Cedar? I think you're maybe doing some construction or something there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And one is Pete Vordenberg, who was US ski team coach back from in the early 2000s. He brought on Matt as a US ski team coach and development team coach. And he said he saw how Matt was working with his high school athletes at Burke Mountain Academy and saw the culture and saw the training philosophy and saw how the athletes approach the sport and approach each other. And he said, we need this in the US ski team. What Matt's doing with these athletes, with this culture here is something that he needed for his team. So he went out and hired Matt, brought him on. And that always struck me. And I think another one I heard this past spring when Matt presented at Congress was, after a year in which the team had unprecedented success and Jessie won the overall World Cup Crystal Globe and really success had never been achieved before. Matt started out his presentation about the year by saying that he doesn't hang his hat on results. And I think that's something that you won't hear a lot from coaches when they're achieving results that have never been achieved before and are unprecedented in the sport. They say, that I'm not really about results. I don't define myself by results. And I think that is a reason why Matt and the team has been so successful, is that they're focused on the process and the structure and the foundation of what athletes need to achieve their best. So without me talking anymore, I will let Matt take it away and talk today about how to motivate athletes and working specifically with female athletes.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great, thanks. It's really an honor to be able to speak with you, and also an honor to be able to come back twice in the last, I guess, 3 seasons. It was June of 2019, I think. And so with that, of course, is honor, but also the challenge of coming up with new content. And there are only so many ways to do this. And I think some of you that were here in 2019 will recognize some themes, as well as those who maybe attended conference in the fall from Club Excellence on the women's coaching symposium. There'll be some similar themes, but I've built this presentation based on just one thing that I mentioned quickly, a slide effectively. And so I think this is a brand new first run through, and I'm hoping that this is all new stuff for you. None of it is rocket science, unfortunately, but that's also what's nice about it. It's easy to learn. Dave and I had talked quite a bit about creating a presentation based on some empirical and experiential opportunities I've had over the last 10 years of coaching the women. And I did that. And there are many things that we can talk about beyond what's contained in this presentation. And I'm happy to stick on for anybody that wants to hang around for another 5, 10, or however long you want to talk after this to go sort of off script. However, what I did do about 15 minutes before signing on here is I changed the topic from coaching women to how to motivate, because I realized that as I had finished this talk, it really didn't fall cleanly down one side of the gender lines. And in fact, these days, there really isn't a clean line between genders anyways. And I find that when I try and participate in a conversation about, wow, it must be really different coaching men versus women, I always feel like I'm sort of the least experienced person in the conversation, because I'm never able to really tell you what it is like to coach women versus men. And I think the point is that with the myriad personalities within our teams, as we get to know the individual, we realize that the gender lines are no longer as clean as we once thought. And so the point of this whole thing is to coach to the individual. And in order to coach to the individual, you simply just need to listen and you need to care. The other thing is where gender lines become a little messy these days is that whether you have had a non-binary athlete or not, perhaps you currently have one, maybe you don't know it, you're going to. That is coming your way and already has come ours. And the cool thing about that is it's not up to us whether it happens. That is going to be something that is a reality on our team now or in the future. Already in the past, certainly, if you've been doing this for 15 or 20 years. And so it drives the importance on coaching to the individual even more. So where listening becomes so critical these days, I think, is that the world is populated with stresses for these kids that didn't really exist in the same sort of intensity as they did when I was a kid. I'm 43, and some of you can probably agree with this. We still had things like overbearing parents and standardized tests and college applications and whatnot. But the modern day fast-paced quest for success and just that need to get into the best programs and have the best equipment and best resources has become so feverish that it has become incredibly isolating too. And it has pitted athletes against one another. It has pitted humans against one another. And we'll get into this a little bit, how we are social beings. And when we find ourselves in this quest for success by ourselves, our bodies act very adversely to being isolated. And so I want to actually encourage us all to work against that. And I think if you're still working for Steamboat, and I know this is a company that doesn't have a lot of turnover, certainly some, it's because you already do this well. Because how to motivate is not just about how to motivate the athletes, but it's also how to stay motivated ourselves. So as coaches, we basically have an option, and it is to add another element of stress to the pile that is already immense for these athletes, or to teach them some skills as we teach them how to become great snowboarders or alpine skiers, bump skiers, cross-country skiers, or jumpers. Teach them some skills, how to absorb the stresses within our own sport, but also within the rest of what's being thrown at them in life. And the bottom line of this is that if we are able to do this, we are going to encourage longer careers. And we've all seen athletes move on to the next program, and that next program might be a collegiate team, might be the national team. And we've all seen athletes that have done that both succeed and fail. And in the position I'm in, I've been front seat to many conversations where I've asked about what happened to a certain athlete. They were so good at the national training group level, nearly making the D team, and then poof, they were gone. And it's often the case that the club coach that I'm talking with, blames it on the college coach, blames it on the next guy. And in some cases, I am the next guy on the national team. And there's no question I've blown it for a bunch of these athletes. But my point is that as club coaches, whether the athlete is successful down the road in that next program, be it college or national team, or perhaps they even switch clubs, whether they are successful or whether they fail, that is still on us. And so I really don't buy into the idea that that next coach blows it for the athlete, because an athlete that is taught some autonomy is going to be able to make some decisions on their own. And so in many ways, the job that we have here today as club coaches for Steamboat is perhaps the most important job you will ever have in your life. And I do want to say that one more time. This job that causes you spousal or marital stress because of the amount of travel that you do, that causes you, in some cases, sorry, Dave, financial stress because it's in your face how much more money some of your friends are making. That very job of coaching at Steamboat is, in fact, perhaps the most important job you will ever do because of the impact that you can have on these kids. So it's really up to us, and it's up to us because the overbearing parents aren't helping. When the colleges send their rejection letters, they don't follow up with the student and ask them if they need any help. They don't provide other resources for the defeat they've just been issued. When an athlete takes a standardized test, they don't get a course on how to process the stresses. They simply have courses on how to get a better grade. Stresses are added and added and added. We are the only entity, perhaps in that child's life, with the exception of those who have very functional parents, that have the power to change that person's life for the positive. And I find that to be a very remarkable thing and motivating thing for me. And I see my role on the national team just the same, because I also have 18-year-olds all the way up to 34-year-olds who also need some help. And so I would like to just identify how important it is what we all do here. I have and by the way, I'd like to allow anybody to speak up with any questions. I'm going to talk for 35 or 45 minutes, and that's it. This is a pretty quick talk, and then we'll open it up for discussions. Let me see if I can advance the slide here. Here we go. So my class goal today has everything to do with motivation. And I'm just going to read this here. There's a big difference between having to do something and wanting to do it. And when we can achieve the latter, when we can achieve the environment where athletes want to do the work, that's when I feel like we've achieved good coaching. And that's what I want to figure out today. It's really about motivation, because a motivated athlete feels purpose. And an athlete that feels purpose is likely to stick with the work for a long time. But not only that, a purposeful, motivated person is a happy person. And that's probably where we can make the biggest impact. That's certainly where we can have the results that we would like to achieve. But not only that, we're going to have long careers, and we're going to create these leaders that hopefully can propagate everything that we are trying to teach to them, to future kids that they end up coaching, which is a wonderful thing to see. So one thing that is sort of a critical center pin for my coaching is that I really value the concept of providing a predictable product. This would have been something that I would have brought up at Steamboat 2 years ago. To be predictable as a coach, to show up within a certain set of parameters that the athletes know and can relax about, that the athletes can learn and expect, allows the athlete to feel some level of security, some level of safety. And our bodies are genetically trained to respond positively to this feeling of safety, because where our genes are adapted from is hunter-gatherer times. And when we were not feeling safe, we were exposed to death. And these genes, as much as we would like them to be, to think that we are adapting in the moment, oh, I can handle this high-paced world, these genes that you are actually functioning because of are 10, 15, 20,000 years old. And so to develop a sense of safety for these athletes can be rooted in a coaching philosophy. And we all have coaching philosophies. There's no question about that. It's a question of whether or not you have yours organized and appreciated. And it doesn't matter if, as a ski club, you have done this last week. We'll revisit it again. We're only going to spend about 3 minutes on it. But I would like everybody to grab just a piece of paper and a pencil if you can. Take 30 seconds and go do that. And then we're gonna dive into this. Now, the coaching philosophy is something that should in fact change from basically week to week, month to month, year to year, however you want to look at it. It changes for me every time I rewrite my philosophy. And it's imperative that I think this philosophy is something that is simple. And I also think it's pretty important that it's handwritten, because nobody hand writes anything these days. And when you notice something in your backpack or in your briefcase that is actually handwritten, it jumps out as being important. And so this, because it is rooted to who you are, should be considered highly important. So I like to have it handwritten. I also like to have it incredibly simple, because like this talk, if I go on too long or if this project is too difficult, I'm going to be lost and you're going to be lost. And so 3 bullet points is enough, up to 5, I would say. But if your personality is one that can't do something anything but completely thorough, I would challenge you to be more simple with this project. 3 to 5 bullet points. Something like, I seek to understand each individual. And then finally, because this is something that you will revisit in the coming weeks and months and years, throw a sentence in there at the end of it that provides a little bit of context, because I found that I get a little lost with my bullet points sometimes if I go back and revisit. And frankly, I only started doing coaching philosophy, or honestly, I only started doing this because I was told to do it by one of our consultants, and I just turned out to really enjoy it and value it. And so this sentence that explains the bullet points allows you a little bit of context when you're going back to revisit. It's also a wonderful thing to see how your philosophy adapts and changes over the years. So if you would spend 3 minutes, I'm going to start my watch, and just come up with 3 or 5 bullet points, even if this is something that you have done recently, about what your coaching philosophy is. All right, we'll do 30 more seconds. So just, you don't have to complete this. This should take a little longer than this, and we're actually going to revisit and share a little bit at the end. So 30 more seconds, and then we'll move on. All right, so as this talk continues, feel free to add to that or change something that you have. The point would be, I encourage you to take this little piece of paper and have it something that gets folded up in your backpack that you are able to look at, once a week, because a document that says Brian Tate underscore philosophy 2001 and that's stored somewhere in his hard drive is probably not going to be looked at very often. If you're one of those rare people that is super organized like that, by all means. But I find just having it available in my backpack forces me to open it from time to time and revisit it. That consistency is immeasurably valuable. So when it comes to actual coaching success, we can think back perhaps from this last season. Maybe we'd be better to think back actually a couple seasons to something a little more typical. But for you, a successful coaching moment might be a day when your team did really well. It might have been a day where you put together a meeting that was incredibly impactful. And in either case, those successes had a lot to do with us either understanding exercise science, understanding the individuals on our team, being able to read the vibe. It took quite a bit from you to catalyze that great day. And for me, I was fortunate to grow up to basically have been raised by a family and coaches and friends who really valued teamwork and working together. And for me, if we were working together, we were having fun. And if we were having fun, we were successful. And so I was accelerated, I think, early in my first days of coaching because that just seemed like the natural way to go. The results would follow if we were able to accomplish that. And then I was reading a book about 5 years ago, and I stumbled upon the actual psychological science of what was happening. It turned out that while this seems like a no-brainer, that there's some actual human needs that are required for this sort of experience to happen. And it's a theory that essentially came out in 1985 in a book by, I did put a citation here somewhere. I think it's down at the bottom of the screen that I can't read, but Ryan and Decky, I think, wrote this theory, and it's called the self-determination theory. And essentially, it explains why people feel motivation, why they feel self-determination. And self-determination is simply a human's ability to feel like they are in control of their body and mind as they move through this amazing life. And I'm just going to read this sort of paraphrased version here on my notes because I can't remember it perfectly. But self-determination theory suggests that people are motivated to grow and change by 3 innate and necessary functions. And those functions are autonomy, competence, and connection. And the theory suggests that people who are able to become self-determined are those who have fulfilled the needs of autonomy, competence, and connection. And so that is to say that a human being that is motivated is experiencing equal parts success of autonomy, competence, and connection. And so for the next 15 or 20 minutes, we're just going to break these 3 things down. And the first of which is, to me, the most important, and that being autonomy. And autonomy is simply one's ability to feel like they are in control. And as a national team coach, something I might have mentioned in a past presentation is I love seeing athletes who show up with their own ideas to training camps, who D-team athletes who show up not telling me or not asking me just how they're going to be learning that day, but telling me some things that they want to work on. And when I experience that, I can often look back to a handful of coaches who are repeatedly producing athletes that are acting autonomously. It's not that they're not team players. It's not that they don't want to learn from me or from our other coaches. It's just that they are coming with their hands on the steering wheel. And the opposite is that you occasionally get athletes from the same handful of coaches here and there who have such an incredible dependence on the club coach that as soon as they are away from that program, they're lost. The hands are off the wheel. And so autonomy really is about us giving the athlete some control. And an example of an athlete who experiences ownership, I think, could just be simply by explaining what it's like to have me leading a technique session for the national team, where I basically have a good relationship with most of them. And they want to learn from this session and they're open to new ideas. And so if I'm trying to teach something technical about skating, they will respectfully execute the workout and they will ask questions and be involved, but nothing particularly earth-shattering about it. Later that afternoon, if I drive this group of athletes to a fast and female event that they are in charge of, and I move around from station to station because I've been asked to take pictures for the event, I feel like I'm watching completely different human beings. These athletes are now each in charge of their own station, whatever it is. Maybe it's truss falls or ropes course or mountain biking. They each have complete ownership of this station, and they are completely metamorphosed human beings from what I had experienced earlier in that morning. And so if we can activate that level of ownership during training, and there are various ways to do this, we can maximize potential for that session. Some other tricks for catalyzing an autonomous response from an athlete would be simply to ask them before they drop into their second bumps run of the day or final interval, what are you working on? And there are instances where, of course, it's going to be okay for you to tell them to work on something because what they've been working on hasn't been actually working that day. But an athlete that is in the habit of being asked what they're working on feels the authority to and empowered when they enter that final interval, that final run down the course, because what they are working on is rooted to what they want to do. There's a different response than simply by being told what to do. So that's a very simple trick. The one that I like to, if I can just go back to that one for a second, speaking of watching the Olympics, and gymnastics is a great one because you see a lot of interactions between athletes and coaches. And it's very often that the coach is just seen barking orders at the athlete. And I love seeing when there is an actual exchange, or even better, when the athlete is talking to the coach more than the coach is talking to the athlete. And I think that is telling of the type of relationship that they've built, whether they have created an autonomous relationship with that athlete. Training plans is something we like to empower athletes to become involved with. If I'm writing a personal training for an athlete, or if I'm writing the training plan for the entire team coming up in October, I've reached out to 4 women and 4 men to see if they agree with where I've put the intensity days. And what happened in this most recent experience is Rosie Brennan suggested that we take the intensity from the final 3 days of the camp, where we usually have our final jamboree of races, and we move them to the middle of the camp. Why? Because athletes are fresh then. Athletes won't experience that mid-camp taper because they're trying to be so good in these intensity sessions. And then we can end the camp with a less stressful environment. There were so many great reasons to do this. And was this a monumental moment for Rosie or for me? Not really. It improved the training plan for sure. And she sent me an email that just said, hey, thanks a lot for listening to us. That was really cool. And that type of thing, while it's not immensely rewarding for anyone, does make a difference if it becomes a habit of the program. Team culture planning is a great one every year. where coaches may be behind the pen at the dry erase board or on the chalkboard, but we are starting with a clean slate every single year. And we let the athletes build the culture that we want to have for that year. And what coaches do is we hold them to it throughout the year, and we revisit this. Perhaps we need to guide the conversation because we too are a part of the team, and the athletes also want our input. But that's a great way to have an autonomous relationship or an autonomous activity with your team. And this year we had a D team athlete that responded so well to it. His first year on the team, he almost couldn't stop talking in this meeting because he was so engaged in the fact that he was building something for the US ski team. And so I want to just ask very quickly if I can get one example from somebody about something, a trick that we might use in our coaching skills that tackles this concept of autonomy. Somebody can just speak up, and if we want to have a couple things, that's fine too.
Yeah, I've got one. This is Carl Denny. I'm the Nordic Combined coach for the U20 team here.
Yeah,
hey there.
Great.
How's it going, Matt?
Great.
Good to see you again.
Likewise.
So something that we've done in the past, and I plan on doing again this fall here is, so we start with an activity where we ask the kids just to write down a couple of adjectives that describe a good teammate, either something that, like a fictional teammate or literally someone that they've been on the team with that they appreciated before, and just write down a bunch of adjectives. After that, I compile them basically into like themes, and we take our like top 3 to 5, and we use those as kind of our own team's kind of core value words, right? So last year, or a couple years ago was the last time we did it. We ended up with 4 of them. It was unified, or united, I guess you could say, dedicated, respectful, and positive. So then we use those as themes going forward and say like, all right, this week we'll just have a little 5-minute meeting at the end of any given practice and say like, pick one and give a shout out, like who was dedicated this week, give an example, and they have to give shout outs to like each other. And I think it feels really good for the athletes to get some recognition, not just from the coach, from each other.
Carl, I love that. That's super powerful. I think when you can create that sort of natural passing around of accolades too on a team, it's hard to experience that level of power. That's a great one. I wrote it down and I'm going to use it in the future. Thank you.
Sure.
There'll be keep your ideas flowing because I'll need them for this next section too. But let's move on to this, just in the spirit of moving on here. Let's move on to competence. So we've gone through autonomy and now we're on to competence. The last one, of course, will be community or connection. Competence, the last time that I brought up a slide like this, I had it written down as mastery. But I've recently read a little bit more, and they're using the word competence a little bit more, and I think it is a bit more representative of what this category is. And simply put, we must feel good at our jobs to feel competence. And of course, when we are starting out, we are not necessarily good at our jobs. And so the key is that we must feel like we have the room to become better at our jobs. And so that might be through professional training, or for the athlete, it might be that they simply have a good coach and they feel like they are having the opportunity to improve. So we must provide the opportunity for athletes and staff members to experience competence. And here are a couple ideas. And one simply is bringing in outside help. And so I think presentations like this are great because it shows to you that Dave doesn't have all the answers, that your boss is willing to hearing outside ideas. And that what it really does is it demonstrates as a coach my limits, that I'm recognizing that I don't have all the answers. I think that makes the athlete feel a level of security that they will not be trapped by how good I am, but they will be only contained by the resources that I'm willing to provide to them. So bringing in outside help, I think, is very important. It's more common than you think to have a coach, and you might consider if you are a little bit like this yourself, because frankly, when I started coaching in high school, I think I was a little bit like this, where I felt like I knew more of the answers, and I was enough to make the athletes as good as they needed to be. And honestly, it's probably a lack of confidence back then for me, and it was probably a little bit of an unchecked ego, which gets easier to check the older you get. But consider if this is something that you can work on, allowing athletes to learn from others, because it's one of the things that hamstrings them when they go to the next program or to the national team camps. Now, not every athlete is actually good at their job. Some of them are just learning how to cross-country ski, and we've taken them on into our programs because we want numbers and we are a community-based program. And so while you may have some incredible national champions, world junior athletes, you also have some people that are just learning how to ski. And so for those athletes, in order to achieve competence, we need to provide empirical data that they are actually improving. And so that's an obvious one where, times and timed events, subjective opinions from coaches and teammates can be very helpful, to hear that you are looking, your skiing is looking smoother, it's looking more powerful, however you want to phrase it. Being able to demonstrate improvement, regardless of the level of the athlete. This must be there must be some equity with regards to how this category is dealt with. Training facilities, of course, and having a great repertoire of coaches at the club is, of course, incredibly important for this. But then also as a coach, making sure that you are vocal about the continuing education that you are taking, and talking about that with the athletes. I make a point of trying to have conversations on runs with the athletes about things that I've just learned from another coach. And I feel like it's not only a way for me to really imprint that idea in my coaching, but it's also a way to show the athletes that I am committed to learning. And so those are the 4 things that I came up for this particular category. And I'd love to hear one other idea from somebody on this call about how we might figure out this category of competence.
Matt, one here just thinking about is I think sometimes on teams, the higher performing athletes, more experienced athletes get a lot of attention. I think something here is to make sure you celebrate the victories of the athletes who are maybe not as performing at the same level. So when they make those improvements, whether it's in training or in competition, to recognize that and create that culture that's focused on improvement and not just on the top performers.
Yeah, that's a great one, Dave. You talk about giving autonomy to athletes in sessions, maybe a technique session where you can empower the athletes to, like Carl was saying, pass around compliments, or it can even be constructive feedback. Allow the athletes to coach one another, can be a great way to hear and feel competence, but coming from a source other than the coach, because it's pretty rare that an athlete is going to get ripped apart technically in a session like that. And so that's a great idea. Really writing that down, Dave, celebrating all levels of athletes and their success. That's very important. And frankly, too, that's rooted to our tribal and our genetic needs that are in search of equity. sort of parity across the distribution of resources. So thanks for that. That one, the competence is kind of the hardest category for me. And this is probably my favorite category, which is simply the connection. And this is where whether an athlete is an extrovert, someone would suggest that an extrovert is incredibly dependent on social interactions. But in fact, there's no difference between extroverts and introverts or anyone in between when it comes to our dependence on social interactions. And the reason for that is simply, and that's not to say that these aren't different humans, but it's to say that being connected to the social element of the team is equally important for everyone. We must all just do it in different ways. And we have genetic responses to feeling isolated. And as I mentioned before, that's because we are penalized for that risk that we are putting ourselves through 15,000 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, before the Agricultural Revolution, when we were hunting and gathering. And so even the introverts on the team, and this is the big risk, and this is the big trap for me that I've fallen into as recently as 2 years ago, where I haven't respected that some introverts really need to feel this connection. We must find ways to plug the true introverts into the team, into the community that is our team. And so just going to run through a couple ideas here. This one was, as most of my ideas are not actually my own, this one was from a sports psychologist named Lauren Loberg, who is still actually Jesse and Michaela's psychologist. She no longer works for the team, but we did time capsule values. I'm not actually sure what we called them at the time, but this was about 2010, and we all laid around on the lawn, coaches and athletes. It was just the women's team. And Lauren had passed out 10 sheets of paper, and each athlete's name was on a different sheet of paper. And we all went through on our own time with a pen, and we spent 45 minutes writing what we valued about each athlete. And they did this also for me and an assistant coach at that camp. And then Lauren took these and compiled little notebooks to be used later in the season. And in fact, we didn't see the first one put into play for 7 or 8 months, about February, when things were starting to hit the fan in Europe. And I heard mention that our first athlete or two had received sort of some communication from Lauren. And the impact that had later in the season, something that we had done in July, was incredible. But not only that, the actual act of sitting around with your teammates, sort of looking around and having to come up with what you do value about each particular teammate was incredibly connective. And so that's an easy one. We did something new this year in Bend with regards to goal setting. Goal setting has never been something I've been particularly good at, though I know it's an absolute must to do. I just am not quite organized enough to see this through all the time. But we had a 2-week camp, and we met twice during the camp for goals, both Sundays, and we set goals for the coming week. And the goal sheet looked like this. This one is mine, and I found it in my duffel bag, and each week is separated simply by that horizontal line. And everyone, coaches included, had to write 1 team goal and then 3 personal goals for the week. And this also got used to mark later in the camp, or as the camp was ending. The red on that is somebody used the back of it as a sheet of paper to mark where the burritos were. But the goals were taped up on the wall in the kitchen where we all ate. And everyone was encouraged to look around the room and read everybody's goals. We didn't have to do it all at once, but throughout the week, make sure you look at everybody's goals. And we just sort of came up with this idea of trying to figure out new things for our team. And what the impact went quite a bit further than we thought it might. We heard athletes talking about these as they would ski by us. on the trails in Bend, talking about, hey, I heard you were working on this. We saw more athletes coaching one another because they had seen technique goals, and they had maybe even written that they wanted to hear more from their athletes, their fellow teammates, about their technique. And so that was a game changer for us, and we will do that again here in 2 weeks in Park City. We had a team role meeting, and this is a great one, particularly later in the season after everybody knows one another, where you sit around and you've done a little homework with a couple veterans on your team to make sure you don't get in trouble and have any awkward moments of silence. But basically, you take turns going through the room, and everybody talks about maybe what this particular individual's role on the team is. And you'll have to read this one because it's a harder one to pull off. It's easier to pull off with adults. Maybe you have an older group of 16 to 18 or 19-year-olds that you could do it with. But this was one of the best meetings I think we've ever had as a women's team, and really gave people a feeling of purpose, which is one of those critical ingredients in motivation. And then for me, the one that is a little more obscure is being sure to capitalize on the moments that are considered low moments. Don't just disperse after a defeat or an awkward situation or a negative experience that's happened on the team. Be sure to come together after that and debrief and figure out what happened, and capitalize on the idea that bonding happens at a much higher rate during and after moments of adversity than they do after winning races. And so a good example for us was we were dead last, or I think second to last, in a relay in La Clusaz, France one year. And we were a little concerned about what was going to happen when the athletes came back to the wax containers, because we didn't have great skis. One of the athletes had crashed, and it was kind of a mess. And they stormed into the wax containers and they said, "Get your skis," and made everybody go out for a ski. It was coaches and athletes, and we had probably the best time of anybody who's ever lost a World Cup relay out there, and entered that next week absolutely on fire, because we showed ourselves that we were not going to be taken down by defeat. And so bond in the low moments, however you might creatively figure out how to do that. And let's hear another example. If anybody has one.
Matt, I just want to say thank you for the time capsule value idea when you presented a couple of years ago. I've implemented that with my U14 Alpine team, and the results that we've gotten out of it I've been really blown away with how thoughtful the individuals are. I give all the athletes a couple pages with everyone's names on them, and then I cut them up, put them in an envelope, kind of wait a couple weeks to give them to them before kind of our big championship race. And everyone's really has said that's been the highlight of their season, a lot of them. And I just want to say thanks for the idea. It's been really cool to implement.
Oh, that's awesome. Who's talking? I'm sorry, I don't have.
Oh, sorry, this is Michael Britton.
Oh, okay, I do see that now. Thanks, Michael. That's really cool to hear. I'm actually going to do that in 2 weeks, I think. Maybe with the men's team too, but for sure with the women's team. And I appreciate you saying that. Any other ideas or experiences along the way that have helped you and your team connect? Just strategies that you might use as a coach?
Hey, Matt, this is Tony Ladico.
Hey, Tony.
I'm the free skiing coach. You struck something with me on the, that we really bond through low points or through suffering. I think, one of the cool things that we do at the club is this, the Emerald Mountain Challenge. And it's like this, run up to the top of Howison Hill. And for some programs, they do a lot of that stuff. And our program, we don't do a ton. So it's easily the most challenging day of our training, our fall season. And there's no question that once the kids make it to the top and they start walking back down, like that is one of the places where they bond and they almost unite in their hate of what they just did and of me specifically. But I think it's interesting and a scary concept to try and find those low points or really hard points where you can really and truly watch kids bond together through that suffering sort of point. Like, and I guess this is sort of a funny little side note but those at clubs knows I work at a summer camp. When we were younger, we partied really hard, and we used to always say that like friendships were made in the evenings while we were partying, and then the like brotherly bonds and sisterly bonds were built the next day suffering through the hangovers. And I think that there's some reality there, but moving that with kids is a little different.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's awesome. I'm actually surprised that I missed the one when I was trying to brainstorm some bullet points for this about hard work, because it's like the whole essence of cross-country skiing is to just like ruin yourself out there on a hill. And even though our sport is accustomed to it, there is an elevated level of bonding that happens in the cool down after that, because I think maybe we're used to it, but you still get the endorphins from the hard effort. There's that removed level of stress that you had before and during the workout. So that's a huge one, man. And that one's like low hanging fruit. I can't believe I missed it. Thank you. And that's Tony. Is that right? Awesome. I love that one. Thank you. Was there somebody else that had one too? I think two people were talking at once.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, this is Todd Wilson. I'm the program director for Ski Jumping Nordic.
Yeah. Hey, Todd.
Thank you so much. Just talking about connection. One thing that I think we've really valuable is every summer we take the kids camping on the way to the camp and start the trip off with a camping trip on the Yampa River on the way over to Park City for our final camp of the summer. And just the reaction we get from the kids when we separate them from the hard work and meeting every day just to train and the focus on skiing, and we go do something fun together. We play games, sit around a campfire and just chat, and you get to know the kids. We have parents come along as well and just kind of bond as a unit. So I would say there's value and connection with the kids. There's value and connection as a coaching staff, and love it anytime we have the opportunity as just a staff to go connect away from the kids, away from the work environment, and then bringing the parents into the picture. We try to do a lot of social barbecues and just relaxed atmosphere gatherings where people can just get to know each other and chat. And I think that's so valuable to connect the team in those different aspects. Coach to athlete, athlete to athlete, as a group of coaches, but then also bring the parents in to feel a part of the team and to see the interaction and to have some fun. Every camp, we try to mix in some kind of activity that is just swim in a lake, go to a water park, go get away from the intensity of a camp and just go have some fun and remind the kids this is a big part of it too. You got to enjoy yourself and create memories. And
that's great.
That's something my wife and I are trying to do as a family, right? With your kids, is create memories, go on trips and create memories that you'll remember for a lifetime. We all draw on those as we get older, what we did as kids. I think we really owe it to these kids to do that, and the responsibility to these families that we are creating memories. We always want them to remember their time with their club, with their national team, whatever, is not just a bunch of work, but we also had one heck of a good time and got to know each other. So to me, that defines connection.
That's huge. And this is Todd Wilson, is that right?
Yes.
That's great. Thanks so much. I mean, that fun factor, but also the idea of just changing up your normal routine. Some of us are actually pretty rigid in our scheduling, and we have to recognize that not all athletes and humans benefit from that sort of rigidity. So to be able to change it up from time to time, I think is immensely valuable. We recently finished a regional elite group camp on the final night, which was a logistical nightmare. We moved from the dorms and we all went camping, and it was an incredible disaster in terms of logistics, but it was, the kids never felt any of it. And they left giving us the feedback that was the best camp ever, simply because we ended with a campfire. Basically, it was about all that had changed. And So I really value that feedback, Todd. Thank you.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, hi.
Yes, this is Deb Rose with
Hey,
the
Deb.
Sports Club Nordic program. You know, and I just wanted to add on to Todd Wilson's camping. We coach, there's a bunch of other coaches with me. We've got a great team of coaches, and we're up to 38 kids. And last year we were not allowed to go, you know, camping, but every year we go up to Steamboat Lake and we rent these little tiny cabins. And, you know, there's boy cabins and girl cabins, and we have about 5 of them. And this year we're hoping to get back to doing that. But it really ends, you know, I always love to do it at the beginning of the season, but we finish up at the end. And I think the kids totally forget about all the, you know, the, like, you know, the tough training and maybe some tough races. And they end on just a camping, and the same thing, you know, the campfire and the games and hanging out with their buddies in the cabins and being exhausted, and they just come away, and we go for 2 nights. And it's a really, I agree. It's the camping brings it together. The fire brings it together. The marshmallows all over their face. So camping is a great tool for training. So I just wanted to add that, Matt, but thank you too. Just good stuff here.
Oh, that's great. Thanks a lot, Deb. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think to show these kids that there is more to, you know, to really to build for these athletes the opportunity that we have as coaches, something that is so robust, that is more than just training once or twice a day, but it is more of this mini lifestyle microcosm that they have to supplement their family life, their school life. I really think the importance of sports is something that if we can truly recognize that as coaches, we are going to be developing some incredibly happy and successful lives. So I appreciate all these thoughts, and there's no surprise that people are more into the connection category. And I would encourage you, for those that had an easy time understanding the connection category, to spend a little more time on the competence and on the autonomy categories, because when we can tie those 3 together, that's when we find the motivated, purposeful, happy human being. And that we fall into that category as well. This is the self-determination theory is not just for the athletes. Now, I'm constantly searching for projects without being overbearing, because they can only handle so many things. This is Jessie, who is quite involved with a book project that our women's team started in 2015. And this was before I really understood the self-determination theory. But in hindsight, what has happened is that our athletes went and interviewed all Olympian alumni from the sport of cross-country skiing. There were only 47 total. And so in doing this, they connected this family that had not really been connected, other than just the current team as it exists at that moment in time. So all of a sudden, there was this 47 strong community. And so the connection was made. The women that were contacted, had so much advice for the athletes that were currently on the team. So we were able to, in hindsight, again, I'm revisiting this, women on our team currently at the time experienced this very creative way of feeling some competence. They came out of it with some goals that stemmed from athletes that were competing in the early and mid 70s. And of course, the autonomy, this may have started as a coach's idea, and it just ran away from any coach that was involved. And it is now a book that is going to hit the press this fall or this winter, I believe. And it has had nothing to do with coaches. This team of 47 people, and that now it's grown to about 60 people since a few Olympics an additional Olympics has cycled through, has become a thing of its own, because I believe the autonomy that everybody felt. It was their project to take and run with, and coaches suddenly had no role in it. And so we are constantly looking for things like this. You can't do 10 of them a year, but if you could do 1 every year or something like that, contests, little things like that can be immensely valuable. So I want to revisit the coaching philosophy as we sort of wrap this up, and I want to show you mine. And I didn't tweak this. This is the one that I found from that I wrote in February. And so in bold are my bullet points, and I just have 4 or 5 of them. And it's simply, I seek to make people feel safe, and I do so by being predictable, judgment-free, and caring. I seek to motivate people. That's my passion. I do so by getting to know each person. And I know that they need purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And I seek to promote human connection among people that I'm around. And I do so by showing that I'm humble, open, and vulnerable, and imperfect. And nothing limits connection by an overbearing ego in the room. And nothing quite catalyzes connection like humility can. I coach because I like to help develop great people, and winning races is secondary. And I try to acknowledge behavior that qualifies as exemplary. So that's in summary, if I can sort of move my, I don't know if I can see this. If we can accomplish all of this, it's at the bottom of my screen, sorry. If we can accomplish all of this, we will have a happy team and happy athletes. I think what it says behind all these pictures is our secret weapon. And so that's my coaching philosophy. And I do reword it and change it every now and then. And it is written down on a piece of paper. So could I have a couple people tell me a bullet point from their coaching philosophy as we tie this up?
Matt, it's Blair Seymour here. One of mine is I seek to understand what motivates each individual.
Awesome. That's a great one, Blair. And that is just, I mean, I love that because it's about getting to know each person. Right. And, there's no, well, there might be an equation for motivation. The answer to that equation is different for each athlete. What the components for each person is going to be different. So that's a great one. And it really does all start there. Get to know the individuals.
Yeah.
Thanks, Blair.
Hi, I'll contribute. My name's Joe. I'm an Alpine FIS coach.
Hey,
One
Joe.
of my bullet points is I like to help athletes develop their courage. I think our sport allows them to do that, and that's an important attribute for a human.
That's a great one. Are you brother of Gilbo?
No,
No.
I think maybe long way back in Bergen.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. That's an awesome one. Courage is a whole presentation there too. That's a great one. And some people just have it naturally, but I do believe it is something that you can learn. And the more that your confidence rises, the easier it is to be courageous. So that's really cool, and particularly in your sport too, but really in all of these sports. Thank you, Joe.
Hey, Matt. My name's Artemis, and I coach with Deb Rose, and nice. I'm a newer coach, and we do U12 and U10 kids. And the main thing for me is having fun. And I kind of see us creating a container, like an environment for growth and thriving. And, we like to see and hear each of the kids, but ultimately we want to have fun. So that's a huge philosophy for me.
And for me too. And actually, we did a survey of what the values of US ski and snowboard should be about 5 years ago. And one of the top 2 values was actually fun. And these are, adult athletes that are weighing in on this. So that's great, Artemis, if I pronounced that right. Thanks so much for that.
Hey, Matt, this is Robert. I'm the women's FIS coach.
Hi, Robert.
I put down that it's, to have a positive learning environment that's also challenging. So, trying to encourage them to learn things, but also things that maybe are a little more challenging than they're comfortable with at the time. on a daily basis, every day. Did they learn something that's really important?
Yeah, that's great. And I think when you're asking them what they're working on is a great way to sort of for you to figure out if they're stuck, and or if they are actually learning something that day. Just asking questions, there's so much value to that. The positive learning environment, I really like that, Robert. I also think it's important for us to recognize when we're talking about technique, and I probably mentioned this in my last presentation, but it's often such a negative way of providing feedback, because with technique, we're often working on things that they're not doing well. And so I think you saying having a positive learning environment made me remember how important it is to point out things that athletes are doing really well and have them focus on something that they're already doing well for a run or two. I think can be quite valuable. Otherwise, we can just sort of constantly be focusing on what they're not doing well. But thanks a lot, Robert. That's a great one. How about one more? Or yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just was add something what you're just saying there about, technique and all that. We also, I call it the everyday drill, EDD. So sometimes we'll have some athletes that are, every day they do one drill until they master it. And it could be everybody doing the same thing for a while, but it can change. I mean, there's definitely 2 or 3 levels of athletes in this group, from ones that are knocking on the door of the national team all the way down to first year FIS. So that's another thing I just wanted to say.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm writing that one down. That's a good one. EDD. Thanks for adding that in there, Robert.
Thanks for doing this. It's great.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a real honor. It is very helpful for my own coaching to kind of organize these thoughts too. So I appreciate you working with me through this for the first time. Any others? Since this seems like an easy one to share.
I have one real quick one because I want to share it because it connects confidence and connection. I wrote down, develop a passion for growth. And with my U10 athletes, what I love the most is because skiing is such a technical sport, the better you get, the more fun it is. So seeing little ripping skiers ski really well just excites me a lot. And so the most successful groups I had, they loved getting better. And then that my helping them get better created a connection with myself and them. And then anyway, so I thought that connection was cool, and just that growth mindset and that daily improvement, and then the improvement increasing the enjoyment. And those groups that I'm talking about, succeed through the program. So that was one I wanted to share.
Amazing. That's cool. And it makes me appreciate the athletes that we get that have the growth mindsets, because we might mention something to them on the trail as they're skiing by. And if they have a fixed mindset, they'll tell us, no, we're actually working on this. And those tend to be from the coaches that do not value outside help. And so to develop that growth mindset, I think not only just helps with learning, but it really helps with the rest of life. And it makes just absorbing everything that is next so much easier for these athletes. So great book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, of course. It's terribly boring, but it's right on the money. And you can get essentially what's in the whole book in the first chapter. Nice. Thanks for that. What was your name? I don't see it on the screen.
Cedar Beauregard.
Cedar.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Cedar.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, if that's enough for everybody, that was basically the summary of my talk. And I would encourage you, not so much right here and now, but at some point today, developing, if you don't have your philosophies already develop that, carry it around with you, and see if it has an impact. For me, it does. And this is generally not the type of thing that helps me. Like I mentioned with my organizational skills, it's tough for me to keep track of something like that. So it just stays in my backpack, and it's easy to stumble into every now and then when I'm looking for keys or a pin to give to a ticket agent. There it is, my coaching philosophy. And it's honestly, it's been a game changer for me. It's allowed me to figure out how I'm changing and where I'm going. So it's a little bit of a roadmap. This is a small presentation. I do not mind people reaching out to me. There's my contact info and phone number, because I love to do this in part. I enjoy teaching, but I also really enjoy learning as a coach. And I feel like, particularly as an aging coach, we see coaches become obsolete, and I see how that could happen to me. And one of my goals on probably this next piece of philosophy will be to ensure that I am continuing to develop as a coach, because it's easy for us to get set in our ways, and I am determined not to. And as soon as I do, I will be stepping aside for the next person, hopefully a woman. Thanks, everybody. If anybody wants to stick around and chat, I'm happy to do that, but I really appreciate your attention. It did run longer than I thought. That always happens. I appreciate all the hard work everybody's doing. Keep sending me athletes, Josh and Brian.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deb.
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Matt. Great Zoom meeting. Really appreciated you taking the time, and love hearing some good stuff from you.
You got it, Deb. And you sent us a great ambassador in Wally McGill a month ago to our national training group camp in Park City. He had so whoever has had a chance to work with this guy and influence him, he had one of the largest impacts on the team dynamic of that week. So I think the club should feel good about Wally. It was really cool.
Great, good to hear.
Yeah, Matt, just to echo that, thanks so much. It's every time I hear from you, I get inspired. And I remember the same thing happening while I was coaching. I had the pleasure of coming out and when I was just starting coaching. And I think when you just started with the ski team and spent some time with you and Vorty and Justin Wadsworth, and I just didn't want to leave, just like you guys were creating this environment and this approach that has been so successful. And then a few more years later, I think 2010, 11, NDG camp with, Sadie and Sophie Caldwell and that group that was just coming up. And same thing, I just didn't want to leave. I just wanted to stay and be a part of what you had going there. So thanks so much. And just one question I wanted to ask, and the topic that I thought applies to all sports and beyond. I remember you talking some number of years ago about the hit rate, I think was the term, about and I'll let you talk about it, but it really impacted me, was just trying to, I guess I'll just see if I'm using the right phrase for that, Matt, but the idea of trying to improve the quality of each session and have try to get as many sessions of the highest quality as possible and have that hit rate be as high as it can. Is that something you can talk about a little bit? And I think
sure.
You're talking about that with just a summer training with that great team that you had there.
Yeah, it's I think we were calling it strike rate, Dave, and how it originated is we were qualifying sprinters into the top 30, and we were trying to improve our strike rate of those that would qualify in the top 30 and advance through the quarters into at least the semifinals. And so that was a metric that we would try and figure out. And I know that's not what you're talking about. And we took that idea and we realized that some days at training camps, we were so busy trying to figure out the logistics of dinners, meals, team meetings, training plans, World Cup calendaring, and hotel booking that is all happening during these training camps. And we realized that I think we can improve the strike rate of success of training sessions during training camps, and for every athlete. And so it seems obvious, but there were some situations where we were just rushing the workouts. We knew how to run a speed workout. We knew how to run a threshold workout or a strength session. But when we sat down for 5 or 10 minutes before a session the night before and really figured out who was going to be where with the camera, with the timers, who was going to be doing the majority of the talking, the coaching, who was going to lead the session, we found like we really improved the strike rate of getting good feedback from the athletes after the session. So a little foresight for us was important, and particularly as we got we became older and are continuing to do so, you get a little comfortable. And there's no danger quite like comfort in coaching, because you'll find plateaus very fast. So we sought to make sure that would not happen. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just really like that concept. And if that strike rate in a camp can go from 7 out of 10 sessions to 9 out of 10, that makes a big difference over years, I guess, was what I took away from that when you presented on that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And the purpose of a session on one particular day to achieve that strike might simply be make sure athletes are skiing together and talking and really enjoying a powder day, or a long easy distance ski with no coaching, or that could actually be a strike for that day. But also to acknowledge that not every session goes well, and it's like bonding in the low moments. When they don't go well, I will often bring up that event at dinner, at the hotel, wherever we are, and say, look, hey, we're aware that we missed the wax, or the intervals were a little chaotic, or we left somebody down at the venue because we forgot them, and to acknowledge those things just through like daily communication and debriefing. We did some consultation with a Navy SEAL out of Colorado Springs, and the SEALs are big on debriefing after every mission that they do. Even if it's just 3 minutes at the end of the day, they do not want to do that, but it has really changed the landscape of their strike rate.
Hey, Matt, this is Josh. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, Josh. Hi, good to hear your voice.
Yeah, I'm about to go through Eisenhower, but one thing you talked about was autonomy. And I think since we were junior athletes, junior programming has become more and more professionalized. Offer more and more training.
Josh, you broke up there for a minute. I want to repeat that.
I just wanted to hear your thoughts on, I don't know, the athletes need that kind of thing. We're training more and more professionally in junior programs, and we offer a lot more training sessions than you and I had as juniors. So we learned to train on our own a lot, and now we're offering so many training sessions each week. I'm wondering about them doing it on their own, and how you would incorporate that.
You're wondering about them training on their own, Josh? Sorry, we lost you in the middle of that, but I think I got you.
Yes, basically. Sorry about the bad service. I'll
good.
Contact you later.
Yeah, no big deal. We have a lot of athletes training on their own, and for me, the best, most impactful sessions are group sessions, of course. There is a fly on my lens. I'm sorry about that. When athletes are training on their own, I try to make sure to give a call to debrief how the session went, to make sure that they're not stuck on autopilot. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
I think just in case Josh is out, I thought that was a good question, and I think I captured. I think I might have talked to Josh about this. Just Matt, just that there's so much more. We're providing so much more than there was 20 years ago, right? That these athletes, we have the opportunity to coach an athlete every session year round, right? To be there, to be guided, to be videoed, to be analyzed. What's that balance between that and then making sure that they're developing autonomy and are learning to coach themselves and to be self-motivated and not to be reliant on the coach? I think Josh is kind of asking about that balance, which I know is probably a long answer, but I think it's a good question that we face in all of our disciplines, right? We want to probably develop that autonomy over time and include training with their friends and family and have to develop their own awareness of their technique. But maybe I might be asking a completely different question than Josh, but that's how I understood it. I thought it was an important one.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking.
That's awesome. And you guys are running an incredibly professional program. And so I feel like it's apt that you are asking it. And I do think the key word there is balance, because the more professional a program gets, perhaps the more at risk an athlete is of becoming reliant on the coach and the system that they're growing up with, so that then when they take off and go to UVM or UAF or CU, when they actually have less structure than you and Brian and others, if you have others right now, are providing, they're in trouble. And so we need to sort of shore them up to make sure that regardless of the level of support and the amount of resources being thrown at them, that they are in control of their own destiny, I think is the key, through all of those resources. So just getting to individually know each person, I think it's pretty quick to be able to identify who's becoming reliant too much on you or the program, and then tackle it individually from there. That's a tough question. I don't know if I got it.
Hey, Matt, I got, sorry, this is Scott Tanner. I coach over at Colorado Mountain College. And, you know, something for everyone is, you know, I've worked with athletes on developing their own warm-up routine each day. It's typically, especially in Alpine, the coaches are busy at that point setting up the training arena, and the athletes are on their own. So first go over possible elements of the warm-up routine, and then have the athletes sort of write their own and adapt it to what they need for their warm-up. And as they go through the sport, and they're 19, 20 years old, they start to know what parts of their body and mind they need to warm up. And that's a good step of them starting to coach themselves. And then as they branch off and they do, you know, workouts on their own, and they develop what they feel their person needs. And so I think one key thing of this is have them write it down, have them have it in their pocket, and have them achieve these things, like it's warming up the ankles or warming up your eyes and your vision. And did you sort of go through a checklist and say, you know, okay, I'm happy with what I did on that run. And you know, as they mature, they might find out that the one thing that is not seeming to warm up, especially mentally, they may spend the entire warm-up session just working on that. So yeah, okay, I'm already bending my ankles. I don't have to worry about that. I'm gonna think about, you know, where my eyes are focused or whatever. And it gives them a good chance to practice sort of self-coaching.
That's amazing. I love that, Scott. The athlete-led warm-ups provide so much control and comfort within the team. And then athletes that aren't leading it also see that it's being led by someone else who's perhaps not comfortable. And I think it reduces the stress all around. And when we see that the teams are not just being led by the coaches and perhaps you have captains, we do not, but the most comfortable people in leadership positions, but we see that the team's being run by others too. I think more people are willing to take control. What I really like about the philosophy at Burke Mountain Academy, which is where I used to work, is that it's all leaders, no leaders. You know, there's no team captain, and that's why we don't have a team captain. But everyone is a leader in a sense, and nobody is a leader in a sense. So thank you for that, Scott. Really, really cool. Really cool to hear about that warm up. Well, thank you so much. Please reach out if if you ever want to just say hi. It's been a blast. It's been a real great exercise for me to organize my thoughts for you. And I hope it was helpful in at least some way for everybody. And I really appreciate you showing up. Thank you, Dave, for inviting me.
Thanks for your time. That was awesome, as always. Good luck with all you have coming up here with training camps this summer through the fall, and with a big Olympic cycle coming up. We're very excited about what the team can achieve this winter and beyond. And thanks so much for all that you're doing for U.S. skiing, not just in cross country, but across all disciplines. Much appreciated.
Good luck to you guys. It's amazing to see what Steamboat is doing. Nice work. All right. So long,
Thanks,
everybody.
Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. We'll sign off. See you later.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Matt.
That was fun.
That was great.
Really, sorry it went longer than I thought, but of course I didn't take into account the discussion, which is awesome. Really nice to see like some active participation by a lot of people, and I feel like we could have, probably done a whole presentation on just even one of those categories.
No, I think you hit the sweet spot there in terms of not trying to cover too much, but getting a comprehensive philosophy there. I really like that, and that, yeah, it's really good. Really good, Matt. I think one thing I might follow up with you on is I'm doing some work on developing a team culture building template that any of our teams can use, that we can have something consistent across the club. Just something that, a coach who's maybe never done it before, or just not comfortable with that, right? That is maybe not something that's in their nature, maybe to provide that kind of leadership, can take a really simple template and work with their team and do a culture, a language locker type of, that time capsule session, right? I think that would be great. I might run that by you when I put together.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. I can show you what we have for a document. I'm sure I could even share our entire culture document. I don't think it's like there's anything too personal on there. But it might just actually, you seeing the whole thing might actually be pretty cool. It's basically 3 questions, and we spend, and it's something like, what are we proud of? What can we do better? And how do we want to be remembered? So it's what are we doing well? What do we need to do better? And how do we want to be remembered? So the legacy is the last one.
And do you use a whiteboard for it? I think it's sort of like right down to the very specific like implementation of it. Do you use a whiteboard or sticky notes for it?
We have, and lately, because we do it in Oregon and then revisit it throughout the year, and because technology has provided us more TVs, we usually just run HDMI to a big TV, and everybody sits around. If we have a big room, everybody sits around, hopefully in a living room where people can be lying down, comfortable. And I mean, we block out 2 hours, and it often it takes every bit of that. And it kind of takes like a few minutes to get going, and people are like, wow, 45-minute hour meeting. And then you can't get them to shut up by the end of it,
Sure.
Sure. It's really amazing. And people just leave feeling good, like they've just controlled something. So yeah, I'd be happy to share that document with you too, just to kind of give you an idea of the type of stuff.
That would be great, Yeah.
It would be cool to see, like, for you to see each team's culture document. And I think it would really highlight what's going on in each place. It might help you better direct resources here or there, or, just provide accolades when due. And
yeah, if you're willing to share, I'd love to look at it. I need to boil it down to something that's going to work for a 14-year-old who's maybe never done it before and doesn't have a lot of team experience perhaps, and also maybe a first-time coach even, right? So I think it's something that's going to be pretty accessible. So yeah, this sounds in line with what I'm thinking. So yeah,
I'll send it to you, Dave.
Great.
Well, hey, Matt, Dave and Matt.
Yeah, hey, Sarah.
Real quick, this is Sarah. I don't want to jump in on your private conversation, but Matt, thanks so much for your time. I think the interesting thing for me was hearing the depth of what some of our staff are working on, but more importantly, many of these topics are topics that we have tried to address with them since you came the first time and even prior, and it's sinking in. And I guess I feel like really appreciate your perspective. I think the other thought that I have is many of the things you talked about today, aside from athletics, are really management styles. And many of the people on the call today are managing other coaches.
Yeah,
and to
right.
be an organization kind of built on growth and development and improvement and, knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and limitations and working on things. All of this is applicable in the management world also for our staff. And
100%.
Dave, I think there's some things we could talk about when we look at all staff orientation, or even if it's acceptable, some clips from this that would be great for our entire group to look at. But anyway, when you're finished with the athletic part, Matt, you could go into the world of management development and training for professionals out in the workforce. You've got a future career in that.
Yeah. Thanks,
So.
When I get ousted by my athletes because I've plateaued.
No, I don't see that in your future at all. But thanks a lot for your time. It was great to listen. I know I didn't participate much, but really good to hear what our staff is thinking about and working on. And Dave, I think you'd agree. Some of what they all touted as their exciting thing is exactly something that we're asking them to work on more. So whether they're doing it as much as they think they are, they know they need to be, which is huge. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you too, Sarah, for that. It's been great to get plugged back in for the second time with this club, and I agree. I was impressed with a lot of the answers. And there's no surprise, a lot of I'm certain that our best coach from every sport is not at the national team level. They're hidden somewhere in the club ranks, and the amount of value that you guys have with all the coaches you have is pretty cool. So cool to be able
We're
to
very
share
fortunate.
Like yeah,
Thank
you are.
you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
See you guys.
Bye, Sarah.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, I'm gonna let you go.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it, Dave. I'll send you that document.
Yeah, and I'll reach out. I'll follow up with you too, and much appreciated. I'll get you. I'll just send me an invoice for what we talked about. Okay.
That's killer. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, well worth it. Very
Say
much
hello
so.
to Haley.
I will. She says hi too. I told her we were going to be talking this morning, and she told me to say hi. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
See you, buddy. See
you, Matt.
Keep it going.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.